everyone and welcome to a new video. Today I want to talk about a topic that is highly discussed when it comes to the life in the Philippines, and that's the cost of living. Usually I hear two very different opinions. One is that people say that living in the Philippines is so cheap, everything here is so cheap and affordable, and the second one is the exact opposite. I hear and read about many foreigners coming here and after experiencing the life here saying that it's so expensive, it's more expensive than they thought, some things are even more expensive than it was back at home. So today I wanted to talk about it and give my perspective and my experience and opinion about this topic, because I think that the truth lies somewhere in between these two opinions. But it's not going to be a video about my personal expenses or my personal monthly budget, because it's not really relevant to what I will want to say in this video, because as you will see, the Philippines is a country where you can live very different lifestyles on very different budgets. So instead of just breaking down my personal monthly expenses, I want to give like a whole idea of how cheap and or how expensive the life here can be. So let's get started, starting with, of course, one of the main expenses that someone will have, which is rent. It's already something that can be so different and highly depends on the area where you are staying. Of course, staying in the cities, especially in Manila, is going to be way more expensive than staying somewhere in the province. And it's not just the area, but also the type of house you want to live in. There are so many different choices in the Philippines. There are condos, which are these really big buildings that resembles a hotel. There are gated subdivisions or just regular apartments and houses. Somewhere in the province, like where I live, for example, I live in Nueva Ecija province at the moment, around Cabanatuan city, and you can find a house for rent for as low as 3,000 to 4,000 peso, which is really affordable. And the higher side can go up to like anything basically. You can find rents for 30, 50, 60 or even more thousand peso for a month if you are looking in different areas, or if you are looking at bigger houses or condos or fancier subdivisions. What can definitely help your budget, though, no matter what kind of place you want to live in, is by finding place, just going around an area, asking from people, because finding something online and renting it through an agency is going to cost way more. The second category is, of course, the bills and utilities. Of course, it's going to depend on the size of the place where you are living and how much electricity you use, how much you are running the aircon mostly. But water bills, honestly, here is not that much. It's usually just around a few hundred peso up to like 1,000 peso maybe for an average size of home for like 1 to 2 people. And the electricity is also going to be maximum a few thousand peso. Of course, if you live in a really big house and you are running the AC in every single room all day, then it's going to be a lot more, but yeah, that depends on you. And the third important utility you will have to spend on is, of course, internet. The Philippines is kind of famous for not having the best internet connection, and it's quite pricey compared to that, but there are a lot of good deals and packages you can get. For example, right now we are using an unlimited Wi-Fi at home, which only costs 1,000 peso a month, and it's perfectly enough for the two of us to download everything, to browse around without problems. So I don't know if we just got lucky, but you can definitely get affordable internet that actually works. The next category is, I think, but is the biggest part of the expenses for everyone, which is of course food, both including groceries and eating out. And it's also the thing that can really save you a lot here or make you spend lots of money. One thing to note though, which is kind of related to the utilities, that the water bill I mentioned previously, it's only going to be for like washing dishes and clothes and showering, because drinking water you will need to buy it separately here, as in most places you can drink the tap water in the Philippines. There's these water refill stations where a big 5 gallon, I think, water costs somewhere between 20 to 30 pesos, depends on the place. So that's something you need to calculate, that it's going to be extra expenses on top of your water bill. But as for groceries, it's really one of those things where your expenses will depend on how much you are willing to buy local ingredients, how much you are willing to eat local food, because it can get quite expensive if you are trying to eat the same kinds of things that you were eating back in your home country. And it also depends on where you are buying these ingredients. When I first came to the Philippines, I was only strictly shopping in supermarkets, which was quite costly. Only after a few years when I realized that I should just go to the public market and everything is going to be so much cheaper. So since that's what I'm doing, and it helped my budget a lot. And eating local food or choosing local ingredients is actually really easy, because from local ingredients, vegetables or different condiments that are popular here, you can make so many different kinds of foods, not just local food but a lot of international food also. If you want to get imported products and things that you are used to back in your home country, you can also do that, because so many things are highly available in the Philippines. There's even whole supermarkets that is specialized on imported products. But of course, if you choose to do that, it's going to be a lot more costly. Just to bring up two examples, one is, for example, coffee. If you choose to buy imported coffee or coffee from like souvenir area, which I was tricked to once. I mean, I saw a coffee and it looked so good. It was in the souvenir section. It was like 250 to 300 peso, and I was like, that's quite affordable, I'm going to buy it. Just to realize like a month later that it was actually so expensive for local coffee, because it can be bought like half the price. So if you avoid the imported and tourist focused areas, you can buy coffee instead of 300 peso for a 250 gram pack. You can buy it for as low as 120 or 130 peso, and that's still a shop somewhere in the mall. If you are living in an area where they are actually growing local coffee and you can buy it somewhere outdoors, it's going to be even more cheap than that. And another example, for example, like snacks. Let's say you want to buy a bag of chips. If you are going with brands that are imported, like Lay's chips, which was my favorite, for example, back in Hungary, a pack of that is going to cost around 120 peso or more, which is quite expensive here for a bag of chips. But if you are choosing some local brands, then you can get a bag of chips for as low as like 15 to 20 to like 30 peso, depending on what type or what brand you are buying. So that's a huge difference. I just used the coffee and the chips as an example, but it's true about most things here. So just as an example quickly, how much it would cost to make local dish from local ingredients. Let's say like laing, which is one of my favorite dishes here that I cooked actually at this location in one of my previous videos. For 2 people, it would need like a coconut cream, which costs around 35 peso. It will need different seasoning and spices, around 10 peso for this amount of food. The dried taro leaves for this amount is going to be around 20 peso. If you add sweet potatoes or like gabi, that's around 30 peso. Extra things like onion, garlic, ginger, that will be from 10 to 20 peso. So that comes down to the whole meal being 100 to 110 peso for 2, so that means that one serving is only going to be around 50 to 60 peso plus rice. And even if you want to add some meat to the dish, that's still going to be a really affordable meal. Versus if I was to cook something made from ingredients that are not really typical in local cooking, let's say like imported cheese or like beans that are not locally used here much, or some kind of imported mushroom, then of course the price for the meal is going to be double or even 3 times. So this is what I meant when I said that your grocery bill is highly going to depend on that, how much you are willing to choose local ingredients. And the other side of the thing is, of course, eating out. I really wanted to include this topic and discuss it a little bit deeper, because I've seen so many people saying that eating out in the Philippines is crazy expensive, and every time they go out it's going to cost almost like 1,000 peso each. It can definitely happen, but another thing where you can keep your budget really low or spend a lot, because yes, there are many cool and fancy restaurants here in the Philippines where I can imagine that you are going to spend around 1,000 peso per person for a meal, but that's only the one side of the story, and it can get way more cheaper depending on where you choose to eat. And It doesn't even mean the street food and the snacks, because that's also something that is super affordable here in the Philippines. There are many eateries wherever you go in the Philippines. On the sides of the roads there's some just food stalls or some actual proper eateries where you can sit down, and a meal there can cost as low as 50 peso. But even if you are going to a bigger eatery with which is like a proper restaurant with seats, you can still get full from around 100 to 120 peso. Hello Pixel, I have a little visitor. This is the eatery side, but of course there are also many local fast food restaurants like Jollibee or Chowking and many others selling all kinds of local or international fast food, where a meal can cost anywhere between around 130 to 200 peso. You can definitely get full from that. And then of course there's the higher end, the more expensive restaurant. But I think this is where some people who say that eating out here is expensive make a mistake, because there are so many cool restaurants. There's even local food where a serving will cost like 400 peso plus of course the drink and the rice and other things. But that's like a high-end local food, if you know what I mean. You can get the same meal in an eatery or in a fast food chain a lot cheaper. Personally, I only eat in those kinds of places when I'm feeling fancy eating out or when I'm celebrating something. You can definitely make it your daily lunch break food spot, but then of course it's going to be a lot more expensive. The next category that I want to mention is transportation, which is one of the most affordable things here in the Philippines, because public transportation, as you know it, there are jeepneys, there are tricycles, which basically just cost some small coin to get from one city to another. So that's an option if you are trying to live here on a budget. But what's good about here, that even if you want to have your own transportation, then having a scooter or a motorcycle is a good idea, because car can definitely be comfortable and convenient here, but it's not as necessary as it would be, for example, in Hungary, where motorcycling is mostly a hobby, as using it for every day it's not going to work all year round because there's winter, of course. But here it's an option to have it or no, so it's another thing that will be a big part of your budget, how much you're spending, if you want a car and you choose to go everywhere with a car, or you just have the car for special occasions or bigger trips and you choose to use public transportation or a smaller scooter for your everyday life. Fuel here is quite expensive, but unfortunately it's expensive almost everywhere around the world right now as we know it. Right now it costs 80 peso per liter, I think. There's one more thing that foreigners will have to calculate with when they move to the Philippines, which is of course the cost of visa. If you are on a tourist visa, you can extend every 2 months, and it's kind of always a different price, but it ranges somewhere in between from 2,000 peso for 2 months to sometimes even 8,000 peso for 2 months. It depends on which part of your visa you are in, if you need an iCard or if you need extra documents. If you have a long-term visa for a year, I'm not exactly sure, but depending on the type of visa you have, it's somewhere between 10 to 15,000 peso for a year. So just to mention some extra things besides the main expenses, I will just tell you quickly because it's getting really sunny and I'm burning. So some extra things that of course you will need from time to time, for example, clothing. Clothing is actually something that can get quite pricey in the Philippines if you are choosing to buy the bigger main brands, because the cost of those things is going to be basically the same as they would be abroad. At least it is definitely true about Hungary and the Philippines. I don't know if you are coming from the US or from other countries how much these things cost, but main brands like, let's say, H&M or Adidas or Nike, Converse, all those kinds of like bigger brands, it costs almost exactly the same in the Philippines and in Hungary. So compared to the overall cost of living here, that's quite pricey. If you don't care what types or brands of clothing you are buying, then of course there are many affordable choices. There are local brands that are somewhat cheaper than these big international brands, and there are so many like public market areas or in malls, small stores where you can buy clothing for only like even as low as like 50 peso for a pair of shorts or like 100 peso for a dress or something like that. But on the other side of things, there's definitely things here that are actually cheaper in the Philippines, at least compared to Hungary. Again, I don't know how it is with other countries, but for example, electronic products are definitely cheaper here. The big brand of laptops and cameras and phones are at least around 20% cheaper here than it is in Hungary. So yes, these were the main things that I wanted to talk about. There could be a lot more to mention, and I could go into details deeper with each topic that I was talking about. Tell me in the comment section if you want me to do it. But my main point with this video was not really to tell you how much it costs in the Philippines, because like I said, it can go in many different ways. It can be really low and it can be really high depending on your preferred lifestyle. So I hope that I could give you an idea of what these differences in the cost depends on, and why some people think that it's super cheap and affordable to live here, and why some people think that it's quite expensive. If you like this type of video and you want to hear more about the cost of living here, or if you want me to go into deeper details with some of these things that I mentioned, or if you want me to talk about the cost of traveling here, then I can make more videos about it. But this is what I planned for this one, so I hope you liked it. If you did, then please subscribe, and I will see you next time in my next video. Bye!